Thank you all for being here. I listened to all of you with great interest. Professor, do you believe that people respond to incentives?
Hey folks, welcome back to True Voice, where we speak truth to power, hold institutions accountable, and push for a more transparent and just America. I'm your host, Andrew, and today we're diving into something that doesn't happen very often, a conservative senator, John Kennedy, saying something I actually agree with. Yeah, you heard me right. So let's talk about this recent judiciary hearing where Kennedy grilled Professors Quokka, Howell, and Dr. Epstein on government transparency and the Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA.
Thank you, Senator. I do believe that people respond to incentives.
Do you believe that what you allow is what will continue?
I suppose I do.
Okay. I listened to all of you talk about enhancing affirmative disclosure requirements, strengthening the presumption of disclosure. I listened to you talk about consultants. I listened to you talking about the need for a public interest balancing test. But those can be ignored just as easily as every other part of the statute. Why don't you just create personal liability for the person responsible for turning over the documents?
Certainly, Senator. There are systems, other jurisdictions around the world that do have, in fact, personal penalties for government officials.
Do you recommend it for us?
I don't think that we're at the point where we necessarily have to take such a step in order to drastically change the incentives that agencies.
Why not? I mean, all administrations stall and restall in turning over documents to the American people, don't they? Does anybody disagree with that? It's not a Democrat thing or a Republican thing. It's an executive branch thing, isn't it?
It absolutely is. I do not disagree with that. It is.
So why don't we hold the people responsible, personally responsible? I'm not saying not afford them due process. You may want to require bad faith with a reasonable, not an impossible definition of bad faith. I mean, if you want to solve this problem, why don't you just create personal liability, Mr. Howell?
I think that's a terrific idea. Right now, the mechanism to have liability is basically an attorney's fees, and those are rarely given out. So the government really is never forced to pony up.
Well, the employees don't care if the government gets hit with attorney's fees, do they?
Correct. And that's why the Department of Justice is willing to tolerate us suing them 100 times, because we all pay for their lawyers.
Look, we can write and rewrite statutes all we want to. But it is clear that people in the government are not responding to Freedom of Information Act requests in bad faith. Sometimes they need more time, but I'm talking about in bad faith. That's clear. And it happens on both sides. So instead of just rewriting new laws and new rules that they're going to ignore, why don't you just hold people personally responsible? What about it, Doctor?
I actually fully agree, and I would point out that there's a mechanism in the FOIA statute currently where if it turns out that there's evidence of an agency or an agency employee intentionally withholding documents without a reasonable basis, a judge could, in issuing that order, make that finding.
And when's the last time that happened?
Almost never.
Yeah, it hasn't happened in the history of ever, has it?
Yeah,
no.
Yeah,
and until Congress makes it very clear that we're serious about this, we're going to be equal opportunity pit bulls here and say, regardless of who is running the executive branch, you have an affirmative obligation to turn over documents. And if you don't do it, you're going to be personally liable. That's going to work, isn't it?
Well, I would hope so. Of course, as you know, as a former law professor, there are issues with, the executive branch claiming immunity for these employees.
I'm not saying deny them due process.
Right.
I'm not saying an ordinary negligence standard. I am saying that if some person is being an obstructionist and you can prove it, they ought to be held personally liable. We wouldn't have to do it for long.
Senator Whitehouse.
I still had 9 seconds left.
Proceed.
No, I yield my back.
Sir.
But I do want to say Professor Whitehouse has some interesting thoughts about enforcing orders that he and I have talked about. So I'm going to listen to him carefully here.
Senator Whitehouse.
Senator Kennedy has predicted my line of questioning.
So here's the deal. FOIA is supposed to be one of the crown jewels of American democracy. It's how journalists, activists, researchers, and just regular folks get access to government documents. In theory, it's a tool for accountability. In practice, it's become a bureaucratic graveyard. In this hearing, Kennedy, of all people, actually raises a legitimately progressive point that both Republican and Democratic administrations are guilty of dragging their feet on FOIA requests. He called it what it is, not a partisan issue, but an executive branch culture of secrecy. And listen, he's not wrong. He asked something super important. Why don't we create personal liability for government officials who obstruct FOIA? And let me tell you, as a progressive, I'm here for that conversation. We on the left have been screaming about transparency for decades. The war machine hides behind classified documents. Federal agencies delay and redact like it's an Olympic sport. Corporate lobbyists walk in and out of agencies while the public fights tooth and nail for basic information. And who pays the price for that secrecy? We do, the people. So when Kennedy, a guy I usually disagree with, suggests holding officials personally accountable for intentionally hiding public information, I was like, wait a minute, this is the energy we need. Think about it. Right now, if a federal employee stalls a FOIA request or redacts it into oblivion, what happens? Nothing. Nada. The government might pay some legal fees, but the individuals involved, they face no consequences. And that, my friends, is why this system is broken. The idea of personal liability is not extreme. It's justice. Because if you, as a government employee, are actively obstructing the public's right to know, you're not doing your job. You're betraying the Constitution. You're complicit in the erosion of democracy. In fact, like Professor Kwok has said, other countries already do this. Some democracies hold public officials criminally accountable for deliberately withholding information. Why are we, the so-called land of the free, so far behind? Now, of course, as progressives, we're not advocating for witch hunts. Due process matters. We don't want to punish honest mistakes or overload civil servants. But if you can prove bad faith obstruction, then yeah, there should be consequences. And that's what this hearing revealed. Everyone, even the experts, agreed that enforcement is weak. They admitted that bad faith FOIA violations almost never get punished. That's wild. We have a system where the people's right to know is basically optional. And here's where I bring it home. Transparency is not just a bureaucratic issue. It's a moral issue. If we don't know what our government is doing, how do we fight for justice? How do we challenge police violence, corporate corruption, environmental destruction, mass surveillance, or endless wars? All these issues are hidden behind layers of red tape and classification. And unless we demand real accountability, including personal accountability, we'll stay locked out of our own democracy. So yeah, I'm giving credit where credit's due. Senator Kennedy raised a damn good point. But now it's on us progressives, patriots, organizers, to keep the pressure on. Call your representatives. Push for real FOIA reform. Demand transparency laws with teeth. And yes, that includes personal consequences for public officials who sabotage the truth. Because at the end of the day, a democracy without transparency is just an illusion. And we, the people, deserve better. Thanks for watching, fam. If you found this video helpful, hit that like button, drop a comment, and share it with someone who cares about government accountability. And if you want more deep dives like this, make sure you subscribe. This fight is just getting started. Stay informed, stay loud, and stay on the side of the people. Until next time,